Know, O Prince, that between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis and the gleaming cities, and the years of the rise of the sons of Arius, there was an age undreamed of when shining kingdoms lay spread across the world like blue mantles beneath the stars.
Nemedia, Ophir, Brithunia, Hyperborea, Zamora with its dark-haired woman, and towers of spider-haunted mystery, Zingara with its chivalry, Koth that bordered on the pastoral lands of Shem.
Hircania, whose riders wore steel and silk and gold. But the proudest kingdom of the world was Aqualonia, reigning supreme in the dreaming west.
Hither came Conan, the Cimmerian, black-haired, sullen-eyed, sword in hand.
A thief, a reaper,
A slayer.
with gigantic melancholies. And gigantic mirth.
To tread the jeweled thrones of the earth under his sandaled feet. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Barbarian Horde. I'm Joe. Here is my co-host Dan, and with us is the great Fullscreen Bossfight.
Hi.
We've done, I think, a few streams together. So, those who I think are more familiar with our horror channel side of things, and we've done also a Rocky stream, which was a lot of fun. Not gonna lie, the Rocky stream was really fun.
Yeah, I really like that.
That was Rocky 4. We still have to do the others. But here we are with the with a presentation on Conan the Barbarian. I'm just going to open up, if I can find it, the actual file that we had in mind, because we need pictures. Otherwise, we're looking at people's faces. And while your face might be appealing, mine leaves much to be desired. And I guess there's Dan's.
And who could deny my face?
I could. So here we are. Exit full screen. Okay, I can do this. So Conan the Barbarian, the movie, as we all know, came out in 1982. It was, oh, what happened?
I think we lost it.
I think I clicked the wrong thing. But it came out in 1982, and it was an immediate box office success with good reason. And even 40 years later, it's still one of the best movies out there. And honestly, it's one of those movies which has so little faithful to the actual Conan the Cimmerian stories by Robert E. Howard. So little that's faithful in terms of just story accuracy and whatnot. And some of the minor ideas. I say very minor because they're minor ideas. But the spirit of those stories, the spirit of Howard, is very, 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 it's very present. Like, this isn't, okay, this is something where, while, okay, I, for example, don't like the Lord of the Rings movies. I know. But the Lord of the Rings movies, I find, while they did get quite a bit of accurate, they got quite a bit, not accurate, but it's about making a good movie, not like doing a visual movie. of the book or of sorts. Not exactly, but my point is, I find that the spirit of Tolkien wasn't present in the films.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I kind of see what you mean, and I definitely see what you mean about the just kind of like the Conan stuff, because a lot of the I watched a movie last night just to make sure that it was fresh in my mind, and I had a bunch of little tiny things that I've noticed too. It feels like, just in the case of, I would say, in the case of Conan itself, there's bits and pieces from all over, but they're just kind of put together to create a cohesive story that works. So that kind of reminds me of like.
Sorry, what were you saying?
No. It's kind of like the Lord of the Rings movies. It's like they took just what they needed to tell a story, and just kind of went with it. So I can kind of see where you're going with that.
They were not exactly faithful to the spirit of the story, I find.
Mm.
But now, hey, if you enjoy the movies, love them.
Mm-hmm.
Love what you love. Don't pay me any mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, for example, the Theoden, Riders of Rohan, Riders of Theoden scene, that is so faithful to the novel. That is a great scene. Like, when Peter Jackson nails it, he knocks it in a home run. When he doesn't, I find, but that's the creative experience. That's art. But with Conan, there is so little that is actually accurate to the books.
Mm-hmm.
But when you watch this movie, you go, it's not accurate, but it captures the very spirit of Howard.
Yes.
There's a love for him. Now, I'll just quickly go for the chat. It was too scary. Guys, my Twitter got nuked.
Sorry to hear that.
Okay, I'm okay. John A. Douglas, I've befriended him the past week or so. So he's one of those Iron Age guys. He's from what I understand, a pretty good writer. I haven't read his stuff, but okay. And he does indie book reviews here on YouTube. I've only seen a little bit of his channel. He's great. But okay, I'll take a look at that later. Honestly, I didn't notice, so I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, Twitter's been kind of doing a bunch of weird things lately.
Oh, I meant the picture disappearing. Yes, it was too scary. Good evening. Hello, Mark. He's a regular. Mark's hilarious. Not knowing the source material myself, this movie got the name Conan to a lot of people. Same goes for the Jackson Lord of the Rings movies. Yes, yeah, that is good. Exactly.
That's true.
Like, that's what I love about the Jackson movies. Now, I found that the movies kind of drove me away from the book of Lord of the Rings for a while. But when I got to the book, when I finally got to reading it, I loved it. But when I talked to everyone, they said, well, the movie didn't drive me away. It brought me to it. And I was like, oh, well, you know what? I'm one guy. The experience of like 2 million people or something, actually, technically, it brought it to even more people than that, to millions of people. That's what's important. It got millions of people to crack open a book. If that's the case, these movies did like so much good for the world. And like, we may have our playlist where we say this is not accurate, that's not accurate. But honestly, if it brought people to the book, even one person to the books, that's important. And the fact that it brought millions, I'm not going to trash Jackson there.
I started reading The Hobbit because of the Lord of the Rings movies, and though I like The Hobbit for the most part, but it was kind of a dry read because there's so much to take in.
We thought it was pretty exciting. Maybe
it's not so much the story itself. It's just like the getting to it, and it covers like just there's a lot of stuff to take in. And I came out of that off of like reading Ender's Game because I had like my first year of my day job, we kind of came out of COVID, so most of the stuff was done because the school was like a kind of empty or like
Mhm.
for months or whatever. So that tail end of that summer, we had really nothing to do. So I grabbed a bunch of books that I wanted to read, which is Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game. I wanted to read that for a long time, and I grabbed The Hobbit and I started reading that. I think maybe it was coming off of Ender's Game where it was like kind of from the beginning to end, it was like crazy.
Well, if you ever want to read Lord of the Rings or Hour of the Dragon, the Conan kind of Lord of the Rings novel,
Okay.
we could always like we're doing book clubs with Dork Lords for Lord of the Rings, and you could always join in on that one. But because we just started it, and
I might have to consider that.
We're doing book club for Hour of the Dragon, but that one's almost finished. But I don't mind starting a new book club with you, just because I like to hear what other people like, what the experience that other people have had reading these books.
That's true. Yeah. I've read. I'm more my Sword and Sorcery end was kind of more on the. I read a lot of Michael Moorcock stuff, the Elric saga, and things like that. And I got really heavy into that. I want to say around the late '90s, and then I started reading R.A. Salvatore stuff. The
Salvatore's pretty good.
Yeah, Salvatore's pretty good. Sojourn was like one of my favorite books of his.
Well, as for Conan, as Mark rightly points out, like this is why I really love having Mark in the chat all the time. He shows up for even our Conan stuff, even though he's not as familiar with the source material, but he comes up with a lot of great comments and observations. Really smart German guy or Austrian, I'm not sure. He's told me, but I've forgotten. Like he's told me in the chat and whatnot. But when it comes to Conan, this movie introduced a lot of people to Conan and got them reading. And I think that this movie did the same thing, like he says, for Conan fans that it did for Jackson, like with Lord of the Rings.
I could see it.
Yeah, but this movie is such a. I think it's John Milius's magnum opus, and I wish he got to make the Hour of the Dragon or Conan the Conqueror, as it's also called. It goes by both names. I just like Hour of the Dragon better. It's like he wanted to make it into a movie, and I wish he got to do that. But I think that I wish that they would just give him a blank check, get him to do a TV series so he can adapt everything that he could of Hour of the Dragon. And we get to see his grand vision for the finest Conan story of all times. Because he did want to adapt the greatest Conan story ever to the big screen. But he never got the chance because, well, for one thing, he got canceled out of Hollywood and whatnot, and that destroyed his career eventually because he was conservative. And he also then began suffering health problems, and that meant that I think he started backing away from even the indie scene because, from what I understand, because now I don't know all the details, but brilliant director in the 80s. He was utterly brilliant here. He originally wanted to do something like an opera. So he made this movie, which it feels like a German opera, like Wagner. And it is a visceral film. Like the music is the best part.
It really is. It really is.
Well, after James Earl Jones.
Oh, that goes without saying.
Yes.
Jones in this movie is mesmerizing. And like you think about like adapting Tulsa Thune, I think it is, from the original Cull stories, turning him into Thulsa Doom for the movie. Actually, I actually kind of like the sound of the name Thulsa Doom a lot more. But Tulsa Thune was meant to be the idea that Howard had, I think, with the character was it predates the English language. So, you know, you might get Doom one day. But Howard didn't predict this would happen. He didn't predict this movie would happen. He was writing the Cull stories in the late 20s and early 30s. So in the original story, it's the Mirrors of Tuzun Thun. That was it. It's Tuzun Thun. Sorry about the screw up with the names.
No, you're fine.
But Tuzun Thun is one of the best Cull stories. But in there, the mirrors show different realities, different realms, different planes of existence, and different planets and whatnot. So we got a possible Barsoom crossover that could one day be. I'm joking. But, and hey, for all we know, what drives Cull almost insane is seeing a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But the thing is, though, in all seriousness, Tuzun Thun has such a knowledge of the cosmos, and Cull is hungry to learn more, and Brull, his sworn brother of the Pictish tribes, comes to his rescue, shatters the mirrors, and stops, Tuzun Thun from killing Cull. But in the comics by Roy Thomas and whatnot, Tuzun Thun would go on to become a major villain for Cull and Conan, and rather than a one-off character. And I think, given the complexity of Tuzun Thun in the actual short story, I think had there been further Cull stories, we would have seen Tuzun Thun. So I'm actually with Roy Thomas on that one. It was a very natural decision on his part. We've got Mark. Thank you. I always fear my comments might be too general or even off topic. No. You're fine, Mark. You're fine.
You always have something good to offer to the conversation.
Yeah. And even if it's something like, a Tolkien perspective on Conan, it still offers insight. And it helps deepen our understanding of, say, Conan, because the mythology of Texas, created by Howard, and the mythology of England, created by Tolkien, we have to consider the universal unconscious theory by Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung, but we also got to consider that these two are not created in a vacuum per se. They're both we're French, so we observe both as some sort of Anglo-Saxon set of mythologies. They're both Anglo-Saxon in nature. Well, one's almost Anglo-Hispanic or something, given Texas, but they are similar. And noting the similarities and the differences and the spirit of both mythologies is something that you always tend to do, and I actually like those comments. So yeah, but when it came time for the casting of James Earl Jones, apparently Jones was attracted to the role because he wanted to play Shakespeare, or like a Shakespeare kind of story, and he was passionate about reading Shakespeare. Now, as a child, he I think he said in an interview, he used to flee to the library and hide there because the bullies would chase after him because he was plump, he was fat.
Yeah.
And this was something that a kindly librarian would let him in and would distract him with Shakespeare and try to cheer him up and help him. And reading Shakespeare really helped inspire Jones. But the thing is, when he got into movies, it wasn't Shakespeare he was making. And, this was his chance at something Shakespearean. But the problem is, Thulsa Doom as a role required him to be buff. And while Jones has always had that beautiful voice, I'm sorry, but that
butter soft and baritone voice.
If you do not love that voice, oh shoot, we're having internet troubles on our end. But yeah, if you do not love that voice, such as during Lion King when he goes Simba, there's something wrong with you. Jones has one of the finest voices I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's
magnificent
voices. No, Pop. No. That's on Fullscreen Bossfight's side. No. Our dog's was resting, and now he's getting all worked up, thinking he's got to go bark. No.
Oh, I understand. I can relate.
Yeah.
Yeah, his voice is kind of like a nice rolling thunder.
Yeah. It's almost like his voice sounds almost like an opera to itself.
Mm-hmm.
And like the first time I saw him was Mufasa, Lion King. So I always kind of related him to that role. But I've seen him since then as in villain roles, in all sorts of other roles, and he's always brilliant.
He was always great as Vader. Yeah.
Oh, Vader, he was also great as. He
Yeah.
was perfect. I'm actually going to say I like that he came back for Vader in Episode 3, and he nails even those lines. And I know some people have some beefs with his lines, but I like them.
Mm-hmm.
But
it makes it more legitimate. It really does.
Yeah. Now I know we all love Mufasa. We love Vader. Arguably, this is my favorite role of his. This is his best role. He's just so mesmerizing. But at the same time, apparently, when it came time for this role, he needed a little convincing because he was nervous. His complaint was, I'm fat. Like, I'm not go to the gym and get in shape. So Arnold, credit to him, decided to take Jones under his wing and help him get buff for the role. And in turn, Jones made sure to refine Arnold's acting so that it wasn't trash.
Okay.
And
all right. I didn't know that. That was awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I read that once in an article, and it was fascinating to think about. Arnold is a really good actor. He's a very underrated talent.
Yeah.
But the one who taught him a bit of acting was Jones, from what I understand it. And this is something Arnold himself has credited to James Earl Jones. And Jones is the sort of actor who's an actor's actor. He's just like, he never gets it wrong. And he's just, yeah. Oh, whoops.
That's
but
okay.
There's a part of him that embodies what the soul of the actor should be.
Yeah.
He embodies that passion, that creativity, that
I kind of wish he had become a novelist at some point, because can you imagine that passion going into a book? But
it's hard to describe.
Yeah. But in this role as Thulsa Doom, he's coming in as a snake man. The snake men were introduced in Call the Shadow Kingdom when they tried to usurp the kingdom, well, the empire really, of Volusia, which is ruled by King Kull, the very powerful king who is an Atlantean barbarian who claimed the crown of Volusia and the Topaz Throne. And Kull ends up struggling against these snake men who intend to kill him and enslave his spirit, his soul, for all eternity, while they would pretend to be him for the rest of his human life, until they get another king in and they do the same to him, and they carry on ruling Volusia forever. But the thing is, Kull destroyed these snake men thanks to to some of the Picts, his tribe's enemies, telling him the truth and what their plans are. And he teams up with Brill, and they slay and slaughter the snake men. And then they would proceed to pursue a war against the snake men to wipe them out, because they should be thought of in terms of the orcs or something. Like, they were evil for the most part. There was, like, it's complicated. But the thing with Thulsa Doom is, Thulsa Doom in this movie is a snake man, one of the few survivors of that kind of incident. And but the snake man reveal comes later in the film. And at the beginning, Thulsa is simply a raider hunting for steel, because he think well, you arm yourself up with enough steel, you can. I guess it's like what is it? An AK-47 in that time. It's like
Yeah,
you're done.
You're building an army and also an arsenal.
Yeah. And Thulsa is really quite ruthless.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Slaughtering that tribe in the beginning with that epic chorus, Riders of Doom, probably the greatest cinematic song of all times.
It was really a powerful way to start a movie, because it just the way they came in, and you had the how do you explain the guy jumping on the rock? Is he like the scout?
I think so.
He basically hopped on the rock and just kind of like sniffed the air, and kind of like had a huge foreboding presence about him.
Yeah. And what's also awesome is that Thulsa, like, he raids the tribe. Now, I've seen some people say Conan's dad hardly put up a fight. I think his dad was actually doing a great job rallying the tribe. The problem is that he got targeted because he was doing too good a job.
Yeah.
And arguably, he probably could have rallied the tribe and fought off Thulsa, but he got cut down before he could. That's at least how I look at it. Because in a lot of the comics, particularly by Dark Horse, Conan's father and grandfather are portrayed as great warriors. And Conan's coming in a long line of great heroes and whatnot. So I like that idea. Conan's, and his dad, before the raid scene, has a great scene with, the riddle of steel. And his dad knew the answer, but Conan has to discover the answer for himself. This is something that must be lived. You can't just give it to someone. And yeah, but I just love that the mom doesn't turn her son's head away, and she's just like, you're going to watch this because
you're going to have to remember
the sons of who we want dead, but very Nordic. But Thulsa kills her in front of Conan in a great scene, though he would never dress up as a bat, so Thulsa was lucky in that regard. I had to crack the joke. That said, maybe James Earl Jones should have voiced Batman at some point. But anyways, but I know that's a weird thought. But he could voice anyone, even Ariel from Little Mermaid. Like, we'd all love it.
What do they call this? Legs?
But the thing is, Thulsa, at the beginning, we see him as a ruthless raider. He enslaves Conan. Now, in the original Conan stories, Conan is never enslaved. Well, actually, he's nearly enslaved once or twice, but he just immediately seems to liberate himself. He doesn't appreciate it. It's Kull who was a slave for a time and ended up having to free himself after a lengthy period of time. But Thulsa Doom, from there, disappears from the movie for a while. And he's got his snake cult that he's building with the two heads coming together. And really, for a time, the movie almost becomes a murder mystery as Conan's looking for who the founder of this cult is and where is Thulsa Doom. And, he finds him, tracks him down, and he wants to slip in there to do him in and doesn't succeed.
Yeah, the infiltration, unsuccessful infiltration of the cult.
Yeah, in D&D terms, we call it a Nat 1 incident.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Which amusingly botches everything. Like, you're trying to sneak around, you accidentally trip, cause a loud sound, and face plant on the button that
causes everything to go awry. But what's interesting about Conan is, by the time he's infiltrating, Thulsa's kind of aware there's someone coming after him, because the previous temple Conan raided, Conan chopped off the head of a giant snake. And Thulsa's kind of aware somebody's gunning for him. But what's interesting is that a lot of critics at the time and whatnot seem to make, for some reason, Thulsa Doom's race or James Earl Jones' race a factor. I'm not sure why. I don't know why. Something like Roger Ebert complained you can't have an Austrian killing a black man. It leaves a bad taste in the mouth. And to an extent, I guess. But on the other hand, that was not Milius's intent. Milius's intent was not some sort of 1940s Austrian fantasy. It was just good fun.
As a kid, when I watched this, because I remember I was in North Carolina visiting family, and it just happened to be on in the hotel I was staying at. And
Cool.
It was just on. My parents just kind of were off doing their own thing, and I was watching this, and I was like, I don't know if I should be watching this, because he had the scene with the when he brought the woman into the cage to mate with Conan. I was like, I don't know if I should be watching this. But I never looked at the whole thing and thought of it as a race thing, because back in the 80s, people
stopped thinking about it.
Yeah, it's we kind of talked about this before the show started, where we got to this point in the 90s where it really wasn't that big of a deal, and then all of a sudden we just kind of slid back like a couple generations.
Yeah, because there were times where you could have black villains and white heroes.
But then we reached a point when, like with the Blade movies, where you had it reversed, and I really like that. And the thing is, I'm just saying, I like it, give the best actor for the job, the role.
Those were, especially with Blade, those were definitely two great actors going at it.
But the truth is, though, but even Roger Ebert had to admit it was a good, well-crafted film for the most part. And I say for the most part, that was his sentiments for the most part. But I just ended up reading up a while back about how some critics back then were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, it's like, guys, who cares? That's not what Milius was thinking. Milius was just thinking, I'm making a great movie. I'm making an awesome.
What I found funny about the whole thing was that the villain makes the hero. Like, if you have a villain with the menacing capacity and capable and very compelling to lure people to join his side or whatever, that's more of a threat. And I don't necessarily look at that as this black man is going against this white Austrian man and there's some racial implication. It's so backwards that you're just diminishing his personal skill level.
Now, I'm just going to play devil's advocate. Now, on the other hand, the generation that Roger Ebert comes from, we're very conscious of World War II. And, you have the whole, the socialists from the 40s. And, there's a bit of a consciousness of that and of their ideology.
Understandable.
Yeah. So I'm just playing devil's advocate. But I don't agree. I don't agree with them because I think this was a beautiful movie, and I'm very biased for this movie.
And even aspects of the Syphilis Project was still in the common memory.
But I think that for James Earl Jones, I actually think he should have been cast in every movie that he ever wanted because he's so talented. But I'm a fanboy. I'm almost fangirling for him. But the thing is
about that. I'm sorry to interrupt. Another thing that really kind of when you stated that, just kind of reminded me is you have to remember that James Earl Jones had a lot of exploitation themed roles up to this point, and up to Star Wars actually. There's a lot of exploitation movies that he was in, and he played the stereotypical black father or the stereotypical hoodlum or whatever, and this is him breaking out of his role to do something different. So. Yeah. It's just really interesting. I'm not going to say it's terrible because
no. This is important.
Yeah. It's interesting just to see reviewers.
I didn't know that about him. I watched mostly stuff that he did after this.
Yeah. It's okay. There's a lot of like he has a very, very kind of broad, huge history in his repertoire is very, very great in terms of like his film history. But this is like between Star Wars, him doing the voice of Darth Vader, like that was like great breakout role because it showed his range and like being able to kind of project his larger than life like voice onto a character and have like I want to say it was David Prose that did the acting work for Vader, and have David Prose like act and then like James Earl Jones provide the voice and like just kind of.
It was a smart move by George Lucas, and with Jones in this film, I find this is his most standout performance, as I said, and his voice was never more mesmerizing than this film. And like you said, what's so fascinating about this role is typically in movies, the hero makes the villain. Like you look at Batman, you look at most action movies and whatnot. They set it up like that. They frame it like that. Here, as you pointed out, Thulsa Doom raids the tribe, enslaves Conan. And then Conan ends up shining so well, and he's so awesome that, he becomes a warrior. But it's Thulsa who makes the hero. And he didn't even plan for that or intend for that. And yet he made the hero. And the thing about the character that's so fascinating is that the character himself is aware of this. Like,
yes,
not at first, but at the end, he's like, he has that great speech where he says,
who is your father if not me?
Yeah. And it's like, yeah. But then I love how you have Conan looks down, looks up at him with pure hatred. Like, how dare you try to throw that one at me after what you've taken from me, and just, chops his head off. But getting to the main scene that we all know about Thulsa, like, I think his most popular scene is the look to the strength of your body. I did that, to the strength of your spirit and all that. And where it's like the riddle of steel is flesh boy. That entire scene, like, Jones is so mesmerizing.
Oh, especially when he lures the handmaiden like off of the cliff. Come to me, child. like it,
I remember being a kid and just going, she's not actually going to jump, is she?
She did. She did. And it's he's a compelling villain. He's basically a cult leader. He's telling people that he has the power to control people to do whatever his bidding is. Like, he's controlled an actual princess to wander from her kingdom to his tower to be his.
Yeah, to basically be his lady of the night, so to speak. And I remember as a kid, like, I've told this story in the World of Conan stream, and I remember telling Dan and World of Conan, like, as a kid, I never understood. If you have all the wealth in the world, all the riches of the world at your disposal, why would you leave that and all the opportunities in the world that your father sacrificed so much for to go do this thing, like basically sell yourself into slavery to Thulsa Doom? Why would you do that? I don't understand. And it's only as an adult that I'm like observing people actually pretty much doing that I'm going, this isn't something that only happens in the Hyborian Age. This is real. And this shows such a fascinating understanding of human nature. And even, like, I hope I don't get too much hate for, say, YouTube, but there is an element of female psychology there that Milius is very aware of, and that does merit some commentary on. Now, I'm not saying guys wouldn't do this for certain kind of women, because there are some guys who do some really stupid things for the wrong woman. I'm just saying. But Milius is showing a great deal of insight into that princess and female psychology to an extent through her. but also the power of a good orator and a good cult leader. Well, not good, but like an evil cult leader.
Persuasion, yeah.
Yeah. And but the character is also someone who he revels in just the ability to drag people down and commit suicide like that. Like he does it out of pure sadism. It's more about his ego and whatnot. And whatever original mission he had, I find it fascinating. Whatever original goal he had with gathering all that steel and whatnot, he's cast it aside. Like he's no longer interested in that. It's not that he lost his way, but like he's moved away from that and towards his cult leader thing. So he's fixated on that. So it's like as the years progressed, he moved onto a different path. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, so I noticed, like I said, I watched the movie last night just to keep it fresh in my head, but I've noticed that he kind of went into a interesting direction where it was, instead of taking kingdoms by force, he was trying to subvert the kingdoms from within by taking the children of like the people in these towns, converting them, and then sending them back in to take down these towns. And I was like, and thinking about that, I was like, isn't that interesting? I mean, you're seeing
today.
Yeah, you're seeing similarities in what's going on today with a lot of cultural stuff. And it's interesting that he decided to go that route because it was the better, the more flies with honey than vinegar route.
And I think that I think that what this shows is Milius himself did understand somewhat where we were headed to some extent.
Oh, the McCarthyism, that's probably a huge, like, detail thing.
Well, also just the, how do I put it? Just a direction where, like, you know, in politics, in culture, and in all this, where we're headed, as you had at the time, for example, Ronald Reagan, who was president of the U.S., Reagan was a very positive figure at the time. Was like, there's nothing you can complain about. But the trouble is, you had, for example, the Democrats and whatnot. You had idiots like Margaret Atwood just going after him and portraying him as some sort of fascist monster when he was a harmless old grandpa for all intents and purposes.
Well, in his first term, he was definitely a harmless old grandpa. In the second term, he technically wasn't even kind of in control of things. Yeah.
Two different terms. But his first term, he was very much a harmless old grandpa. More interested in just making sure the government does nothing, really, and gets out of the citizens' way. But the harmlessness of the man, and even some of his competitors said he was harmless. Like when he cracked jokes with them and they were friendly, but some were intent on hating him. This sort of thing, and they're intent on what we call canceling today. Yeah. And I think that this, and we also got to bear in mind the culture was heading towards subversion slowly but surely, as there was some minor subversion already taking place. In the fantasy genre, it would not be until 10 years later when fantasy would start to be subverted completely. Like a lot of other genres have been subverted recently. Fantasy was at the cutting edge of that one. Now, for those who don't like the subject of subversion or politicization of art, I'll understand if this is an uncomfortable part of the video. I do think there needs to be a disclaimer. And honestly, we are only bringing it up to mention. We're not going to rage at it. What's the point? We're not going to. We bring it up only to make reference that there's something there. And on the other hand, at least in regards to this character, and on the other hand, just looking at it purely as art, it's very brilliant of Thulsa Doom, like you said. More flies with honey. And what's interesting is that it's not just women who are tempted by this. Like Thulsa has his two brawny brutes at the beginning of the film. You can see them in the background here. There's him and him. And the thing is, you know, you look at them, and with their behavior throughout the film, it's like, here, I'll just shift images to make things interesting.
Okay.
It's fascinating that there we have a new picture. It's fascinating that the brutes join in with this. Like they join in. They're still his muscle, but they serve as high priest and whatnot in his cult. He's become a bit of a snake pope. And to quote Grimdark, who tends to reserve that more for Fa-Fama, one of the main Conan villains. But the thing is, the two goons are priests to the cult. So he's been able to take his old companions and kind of transition them into, I don't know what term to use here, but like get them to assist in this while retaining their old warrior, violent, savage edge. And so you've got a very brilliant scheme on his part. He's clearly trying to take over the kingdom, but I don't think he can take over Orus', I think it is, his kingdom by force at this point. Well, he could, like he's got more than the numbers too. But
He'd probably suffer greatly.
Along the way he fought, it wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah, he would lose a lot of like numbers.
But he's like, I don't really want to lose those numbers. I want to actually convert everyone and get them all on my side and reduce that king to feebleness, which he does. And that king can't afford a battle with him because it's his own people and he has a duty to them. And so he's trapped almost in his palace. And on top of that, Thulsa has a hostage over him. Now, we've got a comment from Mark. When I watched the movie for the first time, I was young. I found Thulsa's hairpiece laughable. Fair enough. Yet I did not dare laugh because he was scary, and I was scared. Yeah, there is a scary side to Thulsa.
I mean, one thing that I couldn't help but think about when we first rewatched it, there was something unsettling when I was watching him, and then I noticed
he never blinks.
He never blinks.
That's a good point.
And here it is. Joe noted that sometimes he rocks back and forth like a cobra
from side to side, and it's like he's doing this fascinating thing.
The cobra stare. Okay, I see what you mean. You're going with that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but he's also kind of like moving his head, like.
Yeah, the mannerisms are there.
And you're left going, okay, it's mesmerizing, but it's also unsettling. And yeah, and Mark's picking up from earlier. Who wouldn't follow that voice? Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair.
That voice.
That's fair.
That voice is like, it's music. But yeah, like it's understandable to be scared of this role when you're young. But I think that it's important for, like, what I found is that most guys I talk to, it's like, who showed you the movie? Well, my father did. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's like, my dad did. And, like, I talked to when I was visiting France a while back, because I went there for a job interview. Like I said, I went for a bakery job.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't work out, but I didn't get the job. But the thing is, now I got an offer if I complete a sailing program to go become a sailor out there. But a lady who was in front of me in the lineup to get on the ferry to go back to Newfoundland ended up telling me that because her son really had a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff, despite being Francais. Like the kid couldn't speak a lick of English. But I asked her, est-ce qu'elle a visionné le film de 1999? De 1980. That is to say, did you see the 1990 movie or one of the other ones? Oh, oui, il l'a vu avec son papa. It's like, oh yeah, he saw it with his dad. His dad showed it to him. And he's been obsessed ever since. Okay. And then eventually Conan comes up and she nodded. And I said, well, Conan's something that every man shows his son. And she's like, why? Comment ça, marche. And even in France, it's like the dad must show the 1990 Ninja Turtle movie and Conan the Barbarian to their son. Like it's like your son is like, the kid I think was like, I can't remember, I think like 5 or 6, and he had seen both. And it was like that. Oh wow. So like, yeah, like the I think he had seen both. I can't remember. But the thing is, the dad had oh yeah, he did. The kid had been a little scared of Conan though. But the kid was like, his mom kind of thought it was funny that we have these traditions now, and that this is something that crosses borders. But I think that it's almost a coming of age that everyone is scared of James Earl Jones and yet loves him in Lion King.
Yeah.
And that should show the talent and range of this actor. And when I was a kid, I was not scared of him as when you play Darth Vader, but as Thulsa Doom, I was terrified. He's like, he took this role and he said, oh, well, it was Shakespearean. I wanted to play something more Shakespearean. And this apparently is one of his favorite films from what I remember from that interview. And it's like, I could see why. Like, this is a very Shakespearean role. This is a terrifying role. And he just owns every scene he's in.
There's something I want to point out too. It goes back to the hairpiece comment. From an artist standpoint, because I'm a character designer at heart, a lot of you were talking about the mannerisms, the rocking back and forth, and the not staring. Mm-hmm. Those are all elements of what a cobra would do. His hairpiece also looks like it simulates a cobra hood in terms of how it drapes down and is open like that. So they are going heavy on the Serpent Man kind of aesthetic in order to bring the point home of the type of character he is.
Because from that picture's point of view, it does look like he has the flair.
Here, I'll just share a different picture. I'll try finding a different one real quick. How's this for a better picture?
Yeah, his hair goes outwards, and it does simulate like what a cobra's hood would do, like how it stays in and sometimes it pops out like right before the cobra would hypnotize its prey before it strikes.
Yeah, and he has very hypnotic eyes. They gave him those eye contacts, and the blue-eyed black man thing is a very peculiar thing that really stands out to your eyes, because in real life there's not many Africans with blue eyes. If there are,
I want to say it's a genetic disorder called Waardenburg syndrome. I want to say that's what the name of it is. It actually causes, in certain cases, it causes like early deafness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's a rare genetic disorder, but like it happens a lot in sub-Saharan elements, whatever, where Black people will get blue eyes, but at the cost of genetic issues like hearing loss and whatnot.
Okay, so Mark apparently was his older brother. Doesn't like fantasy at all, but he knew I did, so he watched the movie with me. Oh, that's a good brother.
That was a good brother.
Did he like the movie?
I hope so. It was a good movie. But yeah, the flare thing is something that's interesting. And the thing about Thulsa is he does have the hypnotic stare. Like, he magically hypnotizes Conan's mom.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly where I was going to head to.
And then just before he lops her head off, moving rather as quickly as a cobra might. So they are leaning into the snake man thing or the serpent man thing. And he even tries to hypnotize Conan at the end. You know, when like, am I not your father scene, like that scene. He basically he is trying to hypnotize him, but the difference is Conan has a greater force of will than his mother does. And this is not to say the mother did not have strength of will. I mean, she looked like she could probably handle herself in a fight. She looked like she was a tigress.
Yeah, she was capable.
Yeah. Like, I would argue you saddle her up against almost any man of her village, except maybe her husband, she's going to come out winning. But the problem is that this might sound weird. I don't think even Conan's dad could have resisted that stare. I think it's just something that's particular to Conan himself as the hero. Like, he is that strong-willed. Like, he's that tough in a way, in spirit. Like, there is no one like Conan. There is no one like Conan. And I think that as far as a villain goes, what's fascinating about Thulsa is he is more the he's more of a deceiver archetype, which is to say a kind of manipulative manipulative deceiver, I think it is, where he is a reverse to the wise magician, the magician archetype, which is to say Gandalf. So in this movie, the wizard would be the more magician archetype character, and he acts as a mentor of sorts to Conan. But Thulsa Doom is the manipulative deceiver. Like, he twists everything he touches, and he twists everything everyone says. And even the riddle of steel, he tries to twist and pervert and subvert into what, like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, this is what it is. It's flat.
This is
boy.
Yeah, this is the answer to him because he feels like this is what gives him the most power in the situation.
To answer Dan's question, yeah, he actually did. Oh, well, that's good. It's a great movie.
Good to hear.
Yeah. But I also think that there's something to be said here about what's funny is that I hadn't thought about this in the other stream, but from almost a year ago, and that's that where the riddle of steel is about, the strength of will to overcome everything. Will is everything, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
As Ra's al Ghul would put it, and Midnight's Edge rightly pointed out. But I think that where the Usasi Vaseke, I think the father knew this, Conan discovers this, but I think that the idea is that you must forge your spirit as you might steel. It's not the sword itself, it's your will and ability to use it in a way.
Yes.
But on the other hand, to say flesh is stronger than steel, flesh wields the sword. No, like that entire bit, the problem here is that really what he is saying is give into temptation, like give into the flesh, like the temptations of the flesh and whatnot. This kind of, in a way, refers back to the Bible and to other stories of tricksters like Loki, like Susanoo, or even just name the mythology. You have a trickster, and the deceitful trickster is always trying to say, well, give in.
Hold on a second. I gotta yell at my daughter.
Of the
Ashley, can you please turn that down? This is what happens when you have children.
Okay.
It does remind me of I think it was the story of Jesus in the desert where he's being constantly tempted.
Yeah, there is that. And there's also what does the snake do in the Garden of Eden? It tempts.
Yes. And
you have Loki in Norse mythology. Sorry, I'm a big Norse sagas fan.
No, I get it.
And that's relevant to this movie because Melius was as well. But I'm joking. But the Loki ends up tempting characters and luring them to do what they shouldn't, and often causing them to. Well, he often.
Did we lose him? I think it's frozen. You back?
All right. I think we're just about.
He will return momentarily. But yeah, I do just to help out the stream. The temptation aspect of it is the most interesting. I will say, Thulsa Doom just as a character, he really does lend himself to his ego and trying to convince others to follow his path. There was a lot of callbacks to that, and I enjoy that a lot. As it makes him just a really strong, really strong hero character just for that fact. I found some quotes from just from the movie that I wanted to point out too that I thought was kind of cool.
Okay, there. Sorry about that.
No, you're cool. You're cool. I just tried to hold it. Tried to hold everything together while you were sorting that out. So I found some quotes. If you want me to read them from Thulsa.
Sure.
And
real quick.
Yep. Go on.
Mark pointed out that now I think of Saruman, whose most dangerous feature was his voice from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that is a good point.
And Thulsa's most dangerous feature is his voice. He's very charismatic.
He has a very high charisma. Yeah.
That's a good point.
So the quotes here that I found, yes, you know what it is, don't you, boy? Shall I tell you? It's the least I can do. Steel isn't strong, boy. Flesh is stronger. Look around you. There on the rocks. A beautiful girl. Come to me, my child. And that was the initial one. That is strength, boy. That is power. What is steel compared to the hand that wields it? Look at the strength in your body, the desire in your heart. I gave you this. Such a waste. Contemplate this on the tree of woe. Crucify him. And then
crucifixion.
Yeah,
Conan is crucified in the story of A Witch Shall Be Born.
Okay.
And the dog opened the door.
Yours says that too.
Yeah. But anyways, he just wants attention. That's all. He's feeling lonely.
My dog does that too. Yeah.
All right. Let me think. So, yeah, I just think that even the idea, the desire in your heart, like he says, desire, not goal or ambition. It seems like I said, I think we should look at Thulsa in an inverted way. From the, the father wants Conan to become strong-willed. Conan wants to become strong-willed. Thulsa, what he's doing is he's trying to get on the bed. It's okay. He's allowed. He's allowed. We can help him. Okay. But I think that with Thulsa, help him out. But he's wanting us to basically lift him up and treat him like a baby. Anyways, he's spoiled. As
is mine.
Yeah, all dogs are spoiled.
They really are.
Well, they should be. But the thing about Thulsa is it's about giving in to temptation. It's the opposite of a strong will. He's advocating for a weak will. And that's why Crom would chuck him out and say, no, are you kidding me? That's the opposite of the riddles. That's the opposite of the answer. That's how I kind of look at it here. Because, what is steel faced with flesh? Well, steel cuts through flesh, easy. Yes. Your flesh hand wields steel, but that is only because you have the will to forge it and to then wield it.
Yes.
Without your will, what good is flesh? It's hard to go work out. It's hard to summon up that willpower for a lot of people, but you still have to do it. You still have to go out, touch grass. You still have to go hiking. You still have to go to the grocery store. You still have to go to work. Why do you do all that? Well, for example, Fullscreen, you do it for your kids, but for the wife and kids. But that takes will. That takes discipline. But what Thulsa would say is, well, give in to the desires of the flesh. Give in to the desires of your heart. Well, that's that would mean staying in and not going out, being an adult, going out, doing your duty. What he's advocating for is the opposite of what Conan should do. So he's advocating for a philosophy of weakness. And this philosophy of weakness, like it's tempting for a lot of people, but that doesn't mean it's the right choice to make.
Mm-hmm.
And Thulsa is such a great villain in that he brings, this desire for weakness,
Mm-hmm.
To life. He makes it seem tempting, but really, when you actually think about it, I think that's not the answer to the riddle of steel. That's the opposite. You're advocating, you're leading people away from the answer to the riddle of steel.
And he's clearly doing it because if he weakens you from your determination and your will, you're more easily controlled, which is why he's getting people to jump to their deaths. And I think when Conan first infiltrates the cult,
what's even more remarkable in the movie.
Oh, sorry. I think he froze again. Oh, but what I was going to say is when Conan first infiltrates the cult, the cultists tell him to lay down his weapon and basically go with them, which give up your earthly or give up whatever your desires are. Basically, give up your mission and go with us. So that was the thing. It's definitely, I wouldn't necessarily go join a cult tomorrow or any of that other stuff either. So
no.
Yeah, not me, not my character.
Nice for that. No. You're too godly. You're too good for that. But I think that when it comes to Thulsa, the most stunning aspect is that he believes this. He's the character who, look to the strength of your heart, boy.
Mm-hmm.
I did that. He's like, what is steel compared with flesh?
Mm-hmm.
And he believes it. And that's what makes it so fascinating and gripping with that scene. It's like, you actually believe that about what you're saying. Holy mackerel, holy smokes, you actually believe that. So, you think about it, he's advocating for weakness, but he believes in that, and that will make him stronger somehow. I don't understand how it could make him stronger, but he seems to think this is actually something that, that's how it works. And it's like, no.
Kind of reminds me of when I talk about a lot of the current stuff that's going on, and there's the people that are dyed in the wool, believe in what they believe in, and then you have the others that are using it to basically manipulate others to do what they want them to do. He's kind of somewhere in between those two tiers.
Yeah, there's always and I've seen people on, I know this is not going to make me any fans, but on both political aisles saying all the right stuff to their followers, but they don't believe it.
It's the the horseshoe theory. Yeah.
And they're just trying to get people to follow them. And even on YouTube and in politics and other places. And some of them believe themselves. They believe their own...
the hype, yeah.
Yeah, and they believe what they're selling. And but the thing is that's why it's so important to always have a bit of doubt. That was another thing I remember thinking at one point, what's the difference between a hero and a villain? The villain does not doubt themselves. The heroes will always doubt.
Yeah.
Will question and go, am I doing the right thing here? This situation and whatever.
Yeah, this is why, usually on my channel content, my main thing is to push for people to think for themselves and try to at least...
I've noticed.
Yeah, just take a moment and take a step back and listen to what people are trying to tell you, because a lot of people have good intentions, but then there's a lot of people out there that are trying to get you to fulfill their agenda.
Yeah. And But and real quick, the dog want them for himself, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, dogs are self-serving that way, but they're just they're the best animals in creation.
They really are.
But other than snake men, I'm joking. But Thulsa, at the end, though, he gets his comeuppance. This after he's also tried to kill the one princess, which didn't go over well for him. And the fact that he actually uses snakes as arrows is a really cool feature.
Yeah, I like that aspect. I mean,
I love it.
It's so brutal, and at the same time, it's like 100% success rate in terminating the target.
Yeah. And like, although the Call the Conqueror movie kind of flipped it on its head at when one guy tries to do it, and you could almost hear in the director's room or behind the camera, like, you're gonna try, but you're not Thulsa, so you can't pull it off. And Cole just catches it and chucks it back at the guy. And in Call the Conqueror movie, and it's funny because I just end up thinking, you want to be Thulsa, but you're not him. Not how the badass he is. But all right, so Thulsa at the end, the jig's up. He ends up, I believe you have the quote there where he tries to say, I am as good as your dad here.
Yeah, I do have that one. Okay, so there's 2 more quotes here. Purging is last at hand. The day of doom is here. All that is evil, all their allies, all your parents, all your leaders, those who would call themselves your judges, those who have lied and corrupted the earth, they shall all be cleansed. So that kind of leads into what we were talking about with the subverting society.
Yeah, he almost sounds like it almost sounds like it's quotes pulled from the Bible.
Yeah, or just any major like religious cult speech. Yeah.
Yeah, except he's a psychopath and he's evil. And yeah. And I mean, no offense, but you actually read anything written by about the Buddha or Jesus or even the Kojiki regarding the Shinto religion, none of them talk like that. No, none of them are like, you know what I mean? Like, go slaughter all my enemies. Like, this is only the cult leaders who say
that. We're supposed to love our fellow man and try to teach tolerance and forgiveness, but these people are trying. The people in question, the Thulsa Dooms of the world, are basically trying to get you to cleanse the earth of the non-believers or the people who would go against what he has to teach.
Yeah, and the thing is, anything in excess is always bad, and
yes,
that's the thing with Thulsa. Like, he's taking what the religious need people have, the need for spirituality, and twisting it and pushing it further than it should. And that's the thing with cult leaders. They always do that.
Yeah, he's a hardcore hedonist.
Yeah.
So the second one is, my child, you have come to me, my son, who now is your father, or who now is your father if not from me? I am the wellspring from which you flow. When I'm gone, you will have never been. What would your world be without me, my son? So that's the little last statement before he gets his comeuppance.
That sounds like something a narcissist would say.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Well,
so I made you.
Like, what are you going to be without me? What would you be without me?
Yeah.
Very.
It kind of reminds me. It reminds me of like Hook at the end of Hook, where what is the world without Captain Hook? Kind of like that one statement.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of my ex-boss.
I've known a couple of ex-girlfriends that were like that too.
Yeah. Well, I worked for a female employer recently, and yeah. But although I've seen, I've worked for a guy who was like that, so it cuts across.
Yeah. It's a cross demographic mentality.
Yeah. But that said, it's still a powerful statement because in a way he did forge Conan in this film. He forged his enemy. And there's a great quote from the Rome series. I don't know if you've ever seen Rome, the TV series.
I've heard of it. I've only seen maybe like 1 or 2 episodes.
Oh, it's quite good. And what Brutus throws in Caesar's face at one point, because Caesar says, "I want you out of the city," because like you have Brutus who freaks out and goes, "Why do I have to leave? Like why do I have to go? I don't like Macedonia. I want to stay here in Rome where it's nice and cushy." You have Caesar who tells him, "Well, you have a knife at my throat on every street corner. Like everybody's graffitiing you, killing me. Like it'd be foolish of me to ignore that. We just wait. Like you just go for a few months. We calm things down. You come back, and everybody like leaves it be, and everybody forgets about this." But what Brutus tells him is, "Didn't you once tell me how many times? Did you not tell me countless times that only tyrants need fear tyrant killers? And the idea is that tyrants will breed tyrant killers." And the thing is with Thulsa Doom, he bred one in a way by forging Conan into what he is.
Mm-hmm.
So there is truth to his statement, but like all his statements, he's perverting things. He's twisting it and whatnot. So he's such a great villain. And now that I think about it, Mark Scheiber, where's that comedy made? Here it is. I'm going to put this up. This villain is acting a lot like Saruman. Like Saruman does the same darn thing in Lord of the Rings. And this is a great quality about the character. And the interesting thing is that the Xalto tune in the Hour of the Dragon kind of does the same thing too. He's the Dark Lord of the Hyborian Age in the book. Great book, great villain. And you just have like Thulsa Doom is doing that here. And I really love that aspect of the character. Sorry for getting passionate there. It's just
no. That's definitely something that is needed in these conversations.
Thanks. So I think we've kind of any last thoughts on Thulsa before we maybe move to something like Conan? Because every great here.
To be honest, I think we covered just about everything about Tulsa. I love the fact that like just his character really does make Conan's character complete in this movie.
Yeah.
And just the fact that he was in writing, it's called the inciting incident that leads the hero into the beginnings of the journey. Yeah. He does have a point, but Conan would have been probably a strong, heroic man, even without the raid happening at the beginning. So
I agree.
Yeah, it's one of those things where he tries to insinuate himself into Conan's destiny.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to hijack it and twist Conan into something Conan is not.
Yeah.
And the intro video we used showed a Howard quote about Conan. It was the first intro to Conan in the actual Conan stories. A reaver, a slayer, and all these things. Where Conan's a rogue, he's a slayer, he's a reaver. But there's a few things Conan is not, if you pay attention to those words. He is not a slaver. He is not someone who violates ladies. He is not without mercy. He can be merciless at times, but he does have some mercy. Yeah. Like in Hour of the Dragon, there's a great scene where it's something very powerful, where he finds on board a ship a bunch of slaves. And I shouldn't give these spoilers, but it's a galley full of black slaves, and they're enslaved by some Stygians, that is to say, a bit of a fantasy version or mythological version of Egyptians who worship Set, the snake god. And Conan gets so enraged, and then he recognizes some of his former crew members from his old days as a pirate, and he goes, "Hey, basically, these are my guys."
What's going on here?
He gets so enraged when they try to threaten him and tell him, "You're a slave too." He flies into a berserker fury, fights back, unchains these slaves, and tells them, "Are you just going to, you know, it is I, Amra the Lion." That was his name when he was a pirate. It's like, it is I, Amra the Lion. Are you just going to sit there and let them and like remain a good little slave? And you've got like all the black slaves who look at him and recognize their old friend whom they loved, Amra, and they start chanting his name. And then they just proceed to slaughter the crew who go, "Wait, what?" Where even half starved, these guys are able to take them with the right motivation. Then once freed, it kind of becomes funny because you got Conan at one point who was like, "All right, now we got to go in quiet," and they start laughing and cheering, and they're like, "Okay, sure," and they tease him a little, and he's like, "Oh no, I said quiet, like stop chanting." You know, okay. Then they keep doing it, and he's like, "No, he's like, come on."
Stealth mission.
stealth. And then, but you're, like they don't say anything, but they're like, "You're Conan, like stealth? You?"
Yeah, no kidding.
Right. And it leads to a few funny scenes, and it's a great part of the novel. But the liberation scene is, you can see a lot of Howard's, like, there's a lot of passion behind that scene. Obviously, he had a lot of thoughts on the slavery movement in America. But Conan is a liberator. He's a guy who doesn't believe in slavery in universe. And the very concept of it offends him in the story. And he's someone who says, "I'm no slave. I am king." And like the very notion of being enslaved has him just like he's beside himself and choking.
Insulting. Yeah. He feels insulted by it.
And then the knowledge that his former crew, whom he left behind for another life and they carried on with their lives, that they have been enslaved in his absence, just that's beyond the pall. He refuses to forgive these guys. They all must die. They all must die horribly. And this is an aspect of his character. And in the stories, he does have a dark side. Like when he's hired as a hitman, he says, "Sure, who do you want me to kill?"
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, "Sure, I don't mind." And like, he knows it's an unscrupulous job. And he just goes, "Okay, what's the pay? I don't mind." And so, he's got some loose ethics at times. But deep down, like you look at him, he will never enslave another man. He will never judge a man based on where he comes from or, like the shade of his skin or something. He will never like slaughter a child.
Yeah.
He will never like, you know what I mean? Like he is so darn ethical or at least maybe not ethical, but honorable. And it is really honor there. He's really a different version of Aragorn because they're archetypally kind of the same character.
I can see it. Yeah.
And they're both the returning king, like archetype who's been away and is coming back to claim the throne. Hold on. Okay, it's telling me it wants me to reload the page. I don't know why. I'm just going to try something.
Okay.
I want to actually throw up some images, and this is also slowing things down a little. Okay. But anyways, Conan in this movie, we kind of dived into the deep end, and then we're making ourselves back to the shore a little. What we said last time, a barbarian with a code. Yes, Mark, that's precisely it. Maybe I should title, when I slice this up into two different videos, maybe I should title this Conan the Barbarian with a Code.
I think that would probably kind of help out too with the. Yeah, I like the idea of titling. Let's do that. Do that.
Okay. Okay, you get a vote, of course, and
Yay.
it's also your video. But yeah, Mark Schreiber. I butchered his last name. I just know it. He's always scolding me about that. But Mark, thank you. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, last time you said it exactly, and now you're saying it again. I'm leaving this up. I really like this. A barbarian with a code. So, now Conan starts the film. We meet him. He's a child, and he has just one of the most amazing scenes, like with the dad on the mountain, and you just have that great soliloquy. What is it? Do you actually have that quote?
Oh, let me see if I can find that, because
That is just.
I'm grabbing.
I
I'm
would
kind of going through the IMDb movie quotes.
okay. I would share it, like the actual scene. But the problem is, I think on YouTube I have a limit to how much I can show before they crack down on me. And
Yeah, I understand.
but on the other hand, like I don't own the movie, so I kind of get it to an extent.
Yeah, I had to do some Black Ops stuff in order to get a copy of the movie to see it, so I understand. They have here's Conan's father. Fire and wind come from the sky, from the gods of the sky, but Crom is your god. Crom, and he lives in the earth. Once giants lived in the earth. Conan, and in the darkness of chaos they fooled Crom, and they took from him the enigma of steel. Crom was angered, and the earth shook, and fire and wind struck down these giants, and threw their bodies into the waters. But in their rage, the gods forgot the secret of steel and left it on the battlefield. We found it. We are just men, not gods, not giants, just men. And the secret of steel has always carried with it a mystery. You must learn its riddle, Conan. You must learn its discipline, for no one in this world can you trust. Not man, not woman, not beasts. This you can trust. He points to his sword.
Good point. And yeah, that's now right there. Let me see. Exit solo layout. All right, there. I think that when it comes to this, it shows several things. Like you have the humility to at least say we are not gods; we're just men.
Yeah,
that does take humility to recognize, because a lot of people. I recently heard something. Someone once recently said, I think, when we removed God from people, people began to think of themselves as God, and that this has destabilized people on a macro and micro level to an extent.
yeah, I've thinking about that too. Yeah,
I'm not advocating people rush to the nearest religious center. I'm just offering a commentary.
as if we have to humble ourselves, basically.
Yeah. I've also heard a archbishop, I think it was, from the 1950s say that all men must find their knees eventually and kneel before the divine, because you have his view was you must kneel before God and find your knees, and men must learn to humble themselves. And there's certainly some truth there, or a lot of truth, in that we do need to humble ourselves at some point in our lives, otherwise we get arrogant. But I think that also with that statement is we see the religious beliefs of this tribe, that like the gods lost the riddle of steel, but on some level Crom has a knowledge of some measure of the riddle and expects people to know the answer when they come before him. So he knows the answer to an extent. And the knowledge of it is something that clearly haunts many of the gods, and is something that Crom is hungry to hear of, but he's not going to get involved in mortal men's lives. That said, in the original stories, Crom never really cared about what mortals did. He gave them the breath of courage when they were first born, breathing into them courage, and then he left them alone. Now, if you called upon Crom, he would send down a doom upon you because you do not pray to him for the most part. Now, for the most part, you can occasionally do it, but you don't make a practice of it. You don't like frequently go seek him out. Crom is someone who he's a curmudgeon-y old man. He's Solomon Kane on a mountain going, don't you freaking call upon me. Otherwise, I'm going to come down and I'm going to do you in. And yet, Conan in every story goes, by Crom's teeth, Crom. And like, he kind of does that. So that I once developed the theory, maybe all the bad stuff that happens to Conan is because he keeps calling upon Crom. Like, stop doing it. You know he's doomed to. But in reality, Crom seems to.
It's kind of like the
Crom favors Conan because go.
Oh, it just kind of reminds me of the don't ever say thing. Well, at least it's not as bad as this because it could always get worse. Like kind of a Murphy's Law situation.
Yeah. Oh, Mark says, isn't Crom the kind of god who actually expects of you to do stuff yourself, aka take up the sword and go do whatever needs doing? Yep, that's exactly what Crom is. You do it yourself. Now, I know he has his fans and his detractors, but the notion of Jordan Peterson's psychology of you clean up your room and you go do you go be a man is actually kind of what Crom is. Although he doesn't care if you clean up your room or not. If your room's a mess and you go do your duty as a man, whatever, sure, good for you. But as long as you go be a warrior and you fight for what you believe in and you never back down and you conquer, so to speak. And Crom is a very, very, like his shadow looms over every story in a way and lends a darkness to a lot of Conan stories in a way as he looms over Conan, right? Like, but on the other hand, Conan embodies those beliefs of liberty and strength and vigor and truth and like fighting for what you know to be yours in every story, especially this one. And so, yeah, like as far as Conan goes, as a boy, he loses everything. Then he's enslaved. This part is not faithful to the stories. When he gains his freedom, it's with the assistance of his former slave or master. That's not in the stories. And that kind of goes against some of the themes of Conan, where, you know, he's supposed to always free himself. He's always supposed to kind of break his chains as an individual and chart his own course. But so as an adult, he's uber strong, like Arnold was in that era. And Conan is, at least in this film, someone who he's far more he wants revenge, really. But then he finds that revenge isn't exactly what he wants so much as it's maybe justice or something. And so any other like thoughts up to this point, just as he's going to go confront Thulsa when it comes to Conan? Any thoughts on that?
I do agree. Like it was kind of like a lot of stories that starts out the story of revenge. You kind of learn over time that maybe revenge isn't the best option. Maybe we should be wanting to take down the villain for the atrocities he's committed, aside from just like murdering the hero's parents or like a loved one or whatever. Because I guess it's the same thing kind of happens again when we get to the subject of Valeria, where it's just continually him just trying to take everything that Conan loves.
Yeah, and I think that when it comes to Valeria in the film, well, I was hoping we'd get to her after Conan, because
yeah, I think that's a good idea.
that way I can more easily chop this up and share it with you, because we have our Thulsa Doom, we have our Conan, and we have our Valeria sections. And I think that for Conan, his love for Valeria is a motivating factor towards good, I think, in this film. And towards, like, when he abandons her, it's because he thinks that this will only drag him down in the battle against Thulsa, I think.
Yeah.
That this might prove a weakness against Thulsa Doom. And to an extent, he's right. But on the other hand, him sending back flowers serves to allow them to track him down. But on the other hand, that is him still clinging to the goodness in his own heart, rather than the desires of his heart, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. He still loves her. It's just that he knows that she doesn't want anything to do with it. Like, she even when they're talking about this before he sets out, her main thing was, let's just abandon everything and just go. And he's like, he doesn't tell her right out why he's tracking Doom and why it's important, but he's kind of married to the mission more so. I mean, his heart still belongs to her, but he has some things he has to take care of, and it's convenient to the time of him getting the mission from King Osric about having to track down his daughter and all the other stuff.
Yeah, but I would also argue Conan wants to do the right thing by Osric, because
yes,
the right thing to do would be to help Osric. Now, interestingly, in the film, Osric is a Cimmerian who went south, claimed a kingdom, now has a daughter. Osric and Conan, the two characters, are in dialogue. Arguably, this is the same character in a way. It's just in that they're separated by maybe 30 years of life. And the difference is, where Conan is in his prime and Osric is not, Osric also has a family, has children, and his family has gone the wrong way. And he's also been softened by his love for his daughter.
I do love that speech, that he gives.
Yeah, and Conan, it is a great speech, actually. But Conan is not held back by that. And what's more is that Conan and Osric, the difference is, I think Conan is observing and learning what not to do with his own kids for when the time comes. Now, in the Conan stories, Conan is father to an unknown amount of daughters. He probably has them. I don't know. But his main child is Khan, or Conan the Second. Khan is someone who becomes a great king in his own right after Conan. And is a popular character, although I don't think he appears in any of the Howard stories. He's introduced, I think, in the Lynn Carter, Elsbreg de Camp era. And they apparently do a good job with the character, and apparently it's very popular with a lot of Conan fans. And the thing is, Conan, though, wants both revenge and to do the right thing by Osric, so that you have the two desires in conflict with each other. And arguably, Valeria's decision was not the right one, at least in regards to Osric. And so, Conan goes, confronts him. And the reasons he gives, I would argue, are kind of, in a way, with the scene with Thulsa Doom, if you look at it from a thematic point of view, Conan was caught from a thematic point of view because he's fighting for the wrong reasons, I guess you could say. He was fighting for revenge in that moment rather than for King Osric's family. I'm
Yes.
just arguing from a moralistic point of view. He should have been doing the right thing. Instead, he got caught up in me. And, it's like, you took my tribe, you took my mother, you took my father, you took his sword from me. Well, that's about Conan. It's not about Osric, when it ought to be about Osric and Osric's daughter from a certain point of view. Now, on the other hand, it's a very human thing, Conan. Like Conan, he's right, though, to an extent, in that Doom took everything from him.
Mm-hmm.
And here, I'll just bring this up. But Doom took everything. And arguably, Conan also allowed. That's pretty much Conan in the movie at his weakest.
Yeah. There's an interesting parallel to Empire Strikes Back, if you think about it. Whereas when Luke goes out to save his friends rather than finish his training, and the punishment for that is he kind of goes into that fight thinking that he can save his friends and actually get out of there before things get too heavy. And Vader just beats the brakes off of him. So he went in there for the wrong reasons, got punished for it, lost his hand. And then he comes in Jedi and just is a little bit more refined, understands.
And he ends up beating the snot out of Vader.
Exactly.
And that, ladies and gents, who do any kind of writing, is called a story and character arc.
Yes.
Learn it and learn it well, because most people these days don't seem to be able to do that. Yeah, if I sound slightly snobby, it's because I'm frustrated with most stories that are coming out today.
Rightfully so.
And
indeed,
yeah, as a writer, I'm noting other writers not learning from other stories. I'm also noting, but yeah, and I'm also noting a lot of publishers not wanting to include character and story arcs.
It's the fast route versus the better refined route.
Yeah,
they're so allergic to them. They might need to carry an EpiPen on them.
Oh my god. Yeah. That's a good one, Dan. That's a good one. But yeah, Conan gets the brakes beaten off him. Then goes to, I guess, kidnap the girl and do the right thing. But Valeria gets snaked, I guess, because she's being, she stays behind a little bit. Not wise, but she is buying them time for a bit.
There is an interesting, just to add to that, there's something interesting that's in between there. So when he gets rescued from the tree of woe, she kind of confronts him about it.
Yeah,
like, we do this, but we don't do this as thieves. We don't do this in a revenge. We do this the right way. And it kind of was one of those things where it's like, she's basically telling him, like, you can't go in here like in anger thinking that you're going to just berserk your way through this situation. We have to follow this a certain way in order to accomplish our goal.
Now, in the Howard stories, Conan was always the clever one. And want to know the best part? In the Howard stories, Valeria was the one going, I'm going to just go rage and berserk my way through every problem. Just charging ahead. And she's got a completely different personality. The Conan personality you see in the movie is more like Valeria from the book. The Conan and the Valeria personality where like, hey, we do it the smart way. And I really like you, Valeria, but we do it the smart way, is Conan. So they actually got it reversed. And in the actual story of Red Nails, it's really funny with Valeria because she tries to berserk her way through. And she pretty much says, like, I don't need no man. And she doesn't say it in these lines, but I don't need no man. And I'm not going to be some little damsel. basically. And at the end, she's, for a short time, very short, like she does
Mhm.
break her own chains for the most part and save herself. But she ends up kind of going reduced to a damsel for a few minutes. And it's kind of funny.
I find that I find that a lot of the stuff that the dialogue or that type of dialogue is a lot more endearing back then in the when you see it in media in the 80s, because
yeah.
it's done as a means of like the characters being stubborn and basically showing their personality through that. And then often what happens is they wind up contradicting themselves, or like the circumstances change their opinion on that.
Well, it's called, yeah, it's characterization. Like, and the thing about Valeria is that she's counseling Conan towards wisdom, but which is to say, knowing when to fight his battles, picking and choosing them. Now, as for female characters back in the 80s, you look at Adrienne from Rocky IV. I know people hold that line of, you can't win, in that one great scene against her. I've seen people hold that against her, but that's her worrying for her husband, who's going
It's out
to
of fear. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so her saying that is her, like, that's such great characterization in acting. So there are times when you do need those, not like I've seen in a few publishers, it's a little annoying. I mean, no offense, but like, they're like, we don't want the female character to, like, we don't want, for example, Rey from the Star Wars sequels. But on the other hand, like, we don't want any female characters wielding swords. We don't want any action girls. We don't want any, like, tough female characters. But Adrienne was tough. Adrienne was strong. Like, you'd never be able to get Adrienne past these guys. So it's like, we need a balance. And I think that when it comes, now we also get that great scene with Conan of him practicing the sword and just, you know, testing his body as he's revived from the dead because he's been dead. Yeah. Now, what's interesting is Valeria gave him all the years of her life. Thematically, this means she's on borrowed time. She's got maybe a day or two left because she's given it all to Conan. Which means he technically gets the debt, like, he'll live out the years she never, well, she would have.
Yeah.
Really.
I was kind of worried. I was wondering if we should talk about that now or wait for when we get to Valeria's part. But yeah, that was another interesting part of that too.
Yeah. And it's such a sacrifice she makes for him. And this is really a testament to the love. And her scolding him, like, come on, like, we do it the smart way. Then they go charging in and starting a fire and just going, let's just kill everyone. Okay, if that's the smart way, I hate to have seen the stupid way. But, I mean, no offense. But with Conan, he, you know, I love his prayer where he says, Crom, I've never prayed to you before.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have the words.
Yeah.
But, you know, grant me, you know, like, and not even you may know at the end whether we're good men or bad.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he's like, grant me vengeance. Otherwise, to hell with you.
To hell with you.
Yeah.
I love that line.
I love that prayer. And then we get one of the greatest action scenes and set pieces of the 80s.
Oh, it's great. It is really great, especially just that last minute like fight where
he breaks his father's sword.
Yes.
And I think that's him breaking with the past, like, because he's always been nailed to. I don't know if nailed is the right word, but like he's been.
It's kind of fused with his destiny.
Yeah, like he's been dragged down. Like I'm a historian. I love the past, but on some level, you can't always have your childhood traumas and whatnot drag you down. He's got to step out of the shadow, the big shadow cast by his father, who was a great man. But he's also got to set aside the abuse and suffering he suffered because of Thulsa Doom.
Yeah.
He is not his father. He is not Thulsa Doom. He is his own man. And there's a great line in the Dark Horse comics, because they end up tracing also the journey of his grandfather, because his grandfather went south and became a great legendary warrior. And this is actually faithful to the Howard stories. But Conan's grandfather, well, Conan is told, you are not your father, you're not your grandfather, so this is why you must leave the village. You do not belong here. You have a greater destiny. Go fulfill it. But you aren't
Exactly.
It's not. This is not the exact line, but it's like you have to go fulfill your destiny, and you are not your grandfather. So step out of his shadow. And that's where Conan, in this film, stepping out of the shadow means breaking the sword and taking it up and killing Thulsa Doom. So that I like to think that, to an extent, the lessons imparted to Conan by his dad and gave him the strength to and the will to resist Thulsa Doom's hypnotism and kill him.
Yeah.
So that, like, although we might say he broke with the past, he's also honoring his father. He's also still got the past that he's cloaked in. It's just he's given up the bad to keep the good lessons.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when he finds the tomb of the king.
Yeah.
And he like just kind of breaks that old sword, or breaks it out of its like dust and
Rust.
casing. Yeah, and rust, and it just kind of uses that to forge his new path or whatever. He's still using elements from a past, but he's also taking those things to forge his future.
Because the future is forged and can be found in the past.
Good point. Yep.
A man without a past is a man without a future and without a present. But the thing is, now, and it's interesting because the movie ends with Conan just kind of kneeling, chin on his fist, and pondering and discovering the answer to the riddle. Now we'll move to, I think the appropriate thing to do would be to move to the last few characters. Hopefully this next section will be a little shorter than previous two, because I understand you've got some stuff that looks like you got to get to at some point.
Oh, it's just kids asking me if I want to go to the grocery store pick up some things.
Yeah, that's fine. I get that. She's obviously needing some stuff, and she comes first.
Yeah.
But as for Valyria and Subutai and the rest, Subutai is named after the finest general of Genghis Khan, I believe.
Yeah.
The wizard is not there in the Howard stories. Neither is Subutai. Although Howard was fascinated by Genghis Khan and the history of the Mongols.
Rightfully so, because they are fascinating.
Yeah. And when you consider that most of the historic sources and data coming into the West at the time were just freshly translated, and most people remained ignorant in the 1920s and 30s about this stuff, but there was a lot of knowledge still in the academic circles. Howard, however, coughed up the $50 or the $100 necessary for the history books and devoured them. And from there, he traced out his outline and built up his Hyborian age based on both his understanding of Oriental history and anthropology and Western. So Subutai is really derived from those ideas, I think, with Milius paying homage to Howard's passion for Mongol history. The old wizard, played by Mako, he's just there because he's awesome. Mako, like, he should be in every flick. He's got a great voice.
He really did make that. It made me like kind of nostalgic, like watching the movie last night, and just how his reactions are when he first meets Conan. It was like you can hear the Aku in him, obviously.
Yeah.
And just everything, whatever. he kind of has that level of braggadocio, like if you come after me, I will send a demon to destroy you and all this other stuff. It was like, it's like, oh, you have Arnold, who's larger than life, and then you have Mako, who's larger than life, and they're just
James
kind
Earl
of
Jones.
James Earl Jones is larger than life. It's such a good casting.
Yeah, this entire movie is larger than life. Another notch on the Aragorn comparison: Narsil to Anduril. Yeah, how Narsil was shattered and then reforged into Anduril. Yep, the Flame of the West. And yeah. Conan is someone who, in the stories, doesn't really have a special sword like that. I wish he did, but he doesn't. But in this movie, they give him such a relationship with the swords, the two of them that he has in his life, so that it's okay. That startled me. So that the sword in this movie is almost both of the swords are almost both characters in themselves. That's a very
interesting
element.
It's an interesting thing, just to point out. Like, have you ever seen Conan the Adventurer, the cartoon series?
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah, it has its low points.
I only saw the first few episodes.
Yeah, it's not as good as the movies. Obviously, it's not as but the sword in itself is this kind of special meaning and character as well. So it kind of reminded me of that just a little teeny bit, but the sword's not enchanted, obviously.
Well, as to Valyria, in this film, she's a thief. Keeps repeating a slogan and tagline from Pizza Hut. Or maybe it should be said Burger King and McDonald's, considering the health how good those things are for you. They're Big Macs, I mean. Do you want to live forever? Well, if you're eating a Big Mac, obviously not.
Clearly.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if you're eating a good steak, clearly you're aiming to live forever. I'm joking. But when it comes to Valyria, she comes in as a thief. So the funny thing is that personality-wise, she's nothing like Valyria from the story of Red Nail, where she's an impulsive hothead and berserker in some ways, who you don't know how good a warrior she is. You only have Conan's word for it until the end, when she's chopping men up like guacamole, laughing and cackling as she's doing it, and all but flying into a berserker rage. And at the end, she basically breaks loose of some chains, or slips loose, if memory serves, and then proceeds to take the chain and I think she ends up garrote, like she basically ends up strangling to death an evil witch who's a lot like Thulsa Doom in a lot of ways, and strangles her with Conan not. This is the one time Conan does not kill the main villain, and it's a really cool story. And Valyria in there is a hothead, hot-tempered. She's a creature of passion. She's like an Angevin or a Plantagenet, and she's just utterly tempestuous. They mixed a lot of Bailet, who was Conan's first love from the short stories and whatnot, in. Although Bailet was a slightly darker character who was going down a dark road and was becoming greedier, and was like, eventually she was just like, screw it. She was almost like, if Conan dies, whatever. But on the other hand, he dies. But on the other hand, she did profess at one point to love him beyond what, like, not even death or the gods could stop her. Like that speech, I would come back and whatnot. That's pulled from The Queen of the Black Coast. And after she dies, her spirit will not cross over until it helps Conan survive, is one possible reading of the text. So that she kind of comes to his rescue in pretty much the armor, like what you see with Valyria.
Mhm.
and rescues Conan. And what she tells him is that she still loves him. I think that, like I said, it's been a while since I read both texts.
Okay.
So, because we've been focused on Hour of the Dragon and The Witch Shall Be Born, and both very good stories. And the thing is, Baelit is markedly a little more similar to Valyria in this movie, but very, very different from Valyria in personality. And Baelit's not a warrior. She's a pirate queen, but you never see her fight. And she doesn't, like, clothes is optional with her. And obviously you can't have that in a film because your female lead would be running around in the buff. But Baelit is someone very, very tempestuous, but she was headed down a dark road. And death was actually redemptive for her. She's like Boromir in a way. Except Boromir is a much more heroic character from the word go. Boromir, there's only flashes of darkness, and then you get the actual darkness when he goes to take the ring. And Boromir's first reaction is, I'm sorry, Frodo, what have I done? I can't believe I did that. Oh my gosh. Because Boromir deep down is a really great guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, he was susceptible in the end. He spent too much time around that ring. But Baelit is someone whose greed for treasure is starting to get to her over the course of, I believe, 2 years. That said, in the movie, Valyria is the voice of reason, and she ends up trying to advise Conan to do things the right way and save Osric's daughter. But before that, as you noted, she's like, no, we shouldn't. We got the gold. We got the money from Osric. Let's just go. Let's not even go through this. Whereas Valyria in Red Nails would say, no, we have to. We've been paid. Not to mention, let's see how, let's plunder. This snake cult must have a lot of money. Let's go plunder them and take everything they've got. We're going to, she's gung-ho for just about every crazy scheme.
I have the quote if you want
sure.
that.
Sure.
To the hellfires with Thulsa Doom. He's evil, a sorcerer who can summon demons. His followers' only purpose is to die in his service. Thousands of them. All my life I've been alone. Many times I've faced death with no one to know. I would look into the huts and the tents of others to the coldest dark, and I would see figures holding each other in the night, but I always passed by.
Yep. Honestly, what's interesting about that quote is that if we were to look at I don't know if I could see Valyria saying that in the short stories. I don't know if I could see Baelit saying, certainly not Baelit. Weirdly, I could see Conan saying that to an extent. Not the first part, but the part about, looking into the tents of others and, always passing by. That part sounds like something Conan might say, because there came a time when he did hunger for a bit more stability in his life. Conan is a character with a lot of great loves, but his greatest only appears in Hour of the Dragon, when he meets the very, I don't know what word to use to describe Zenobia. Queenly. Maybe queenly is the right word. So, yeah, you've got a lot with Valyria that there's shades of other characters in this depiction. So it's not accurate at all to Red Nails or to the other stories, but she is a pretty interesting character.
Yeah.
And she trades all the years of her life, which is something very heroic and almost foolish, I might say, and gives it over to Conan. There's almost something like a mother archetype there. You know what I mean? There's almost something like giving birth to him again in a weird way. And she does look a lot like his mother. So there's something there I think Milius was doing with the two female characters. But at the same time, Valyria is a character whom in this film is ultimately the best part of Conan in a way.
Yeah. I think she nurtures an aspect of his character.
Yeah, she's very much more nurturing with him, but Conan is determined to tenter sa chance, as we French put it, tempt his luck or his fortune. And the trouble is that, yeah, she doesn't make it because she trades all the years of her life to him, which is an incredible self-sacrifice. C'est incroyable.
Yeah.
And yeah, so as for her, she's a really good warrior in this film, but the Valeria in the short story is just a machine. Like, if I had to compare her, weirdly, I don't know if there's almost any other character in Howard's literature who can compare with Valeria as a war. Okay, I should specify the Hyborian Age. I'm not sure because Solomon Kane and Cull are pretty good fighters. Same with Brill. But in the Hyborian Age, Valeria under Howard's pen is someone who she cuts down Red. She could cut down Red Sonja. She could cut down Xena. She could cut down just about every other character except Conan, teaming up and still come out laughing or sneering. She's just that great, a swordswoman. And she's such a fierce fighter. Even Conan is kind of going, I would rather not fight her.
Yeah.
And Conan is the best fighter. Like, but on the other hand, Conan finds that her being so dangerous is sexy, I guess you could say.
Yes. There is it's the girl seeking the boyfriend with the leather jacket and the motorcycle type of energy.
yeah. That's very much in the film, but yeah, in the short story, Conan's almost the better one. Like, so that you almost have her with a leather jacket, and he's seeking her out because he's like, wow, that's hot.
Yeah.
So,
it's the end of Grease, if you will.
Yeah, it's Grease. It's Grease coming out. They're both greasers, but in the film, Valeria does speak with a lot of wisdom at quite a few points. I prefer the Howardian characterization, but that in the film is still good. And the relationship is actually a very, very deep and sincere one.
Yeah.
As for Subutai, oh, sorry.
Oh no! I was gonna. Should I throw out the quote about
sure,
or Valeria's last quote before she passes?
Yeah.
All the gods that cannot sever us. If I were dead and you were still fighting for life, I would come back from the darkness, back from the pit of hell to fight at your side. Which is foreshadowing, but yeah.
That's also, I think, a Bailet quote from Queen of the Black Coast.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's what Bailet told him at one point.
So, yeah, as you mentioned, there's an element of Bailet's story in this Valeria.
Yeah. And this character is not the Valeria of Howard, but she's still a good character. She's not the love of Conan's life, but she plays a role in his life, I guess you could say. And it's, as for Subutai, he's a thief Conan meets along the way. Him and Conan have a bit of a talk about religion and their gods and which one's better. And the trouble is that they ultimately still choose to be friends. In the short stories, Conan does have a lot of these conversations about the gods and whatnot. With Bailet, for example, it's actually a very fascinating discussion. There's a few in Hour of the Dragon. There's a few in other stories. And Conan is a very philosophical character. And he may claim that he's not interested in theology, but he does have a fascination with it. And in the film, this is well portrayed.
Yeah, they briefly alluded to it, and I felt like it really did do a good job of fleshing his character out in the the opening sequences when he's kind of going through his circus period where he's basically killing off people for sport.
And now what Milius also does with the support cast is interesting. And this is something I have a problem with the Peter Jackson films. The Jackson films have, like, you basically have Gimli, who's all about a fart joke. You've got Merry and Pippin, who are much the same. You've got a series of really bad, you know what I mean? Like, not exactly fart jokes, but you've got
caricatures.
Really,
yeah.
Yeah. And this is not what the characters are. Like, Merry in the Lord of the Rings is more like Subutai in a lot of ways. Like, his attitude is, he swore an oath to Frodo and Sam that he would help them. He will die before he breaks it. And he's knowledgeable about the world. He's knowledgeable about the outside world. He's the one hobbit who gives warnings and says, like, before you tread out of the Shire, be careful what's out there. Now, I'm going to guide you to Bree, but, like, you got to be careful what's out there. And he's the one hobbit Aragorn often trusts and delegates to, because Aragorn sees it as, okay, of all the hobbits, this guy knows how to fight. He knows what he's doing. And you, of course, have Pippin, who's the young and inexperienced one. But, and Gimli, who's basically Gawain, or Gawain, he's a chivalric knight, just in dwarf.
I never thought of it that way.
Well, that's what he is in the novel. And Milius could have done this with his characters, but he doesn't turn them into cheap jokes. He has one or two jokes with them, sure. But you have Subutai and the Wizard who do fight at the end, and they're actually really good at it. And you've got some great scenes where, you know, they show their love and loyalty for Conan. They do care for him, and they want to help him. And, like, the best scene I find is one of the best scenes in the movie is when Conan says, you know, like, I remember sitting on an autumn day like this with my father 20 years ago. Remember that? Where he's like,
yeah,
you have him 20 years of grueling fighting, and for what? That entire scene where he talks about his dad and he reminisces about better days. And you have Subutai, who's like, we'd still end up here. Pretty much. And this is a great character moment. Now, the small character moments I find are not there in the Lord of the Rings movies. And the weird humor, the slapstick, I don't know why it's there. But Milius could have done that, but he chooses not to. He keeps the tone, he keeps to a certain tone throughout the film. And he's very particular, like a conductor with an orchestra. And he's determined to keep to his tone and whatnot.
So I've noticed something. The way that a lot of the 80s, 70s, and 80s directors have handled films compared to, like, more recent times, they handle things, because Conan ultimately is a comic book, is technically a comic book character, so you could argue that this is a comic book film as well as a film based off of a series of novels.
Yep.
But this is handled more seriously than a lot of 90s comic book films. Well, I mean, you can even argue to say, I mean, there's an argument that could be made that Howard the Duck, when that was made, was taken a little bit more seriously than a lot of the later Marvel films. But it felt like there's a level of understanding the audience and knowing that the audience is smart enough to be able to handle these characters in this capacity.
Yeah, you never see a director treat an audience intelligently today.
Yeah, we're all apparently 14-year-old children to a lot of modern directors.
No, we're all even dumber than that. We're a bunch of
kindergartners.
I was going to say a bunch of donkeys or something, but
okay.
Oh, I mean, kindergartners are really smart, like, but yeah, the perception of kindergartners are the perception of, they think we are like a bunch of donkeys or braying animals.
Well, before we got on, like the proofreader I told you about, the one I know from Kenya who's been reading some of our stuff, her kid reads pretty voraciously, and is, although he only has access to like 10 books or something, apparently better read than some movie directors and whatnot. So like, and Dan's tutored some kids who love reading and read more than some adults do.
Yeah.
And I find that just shocking and horrifying in some ways, because
I've even had a dyslexic kid who loved.
Are you back? Yeah, I understand that. I definitely understand that. It's kind of I guess we're gonna be give him a couple minutes to pop back in, but yeah, I kind of have a similar situation where I was a very voracious reader in my youth, so I did a lot of time reading, and it was one of those things where you tend to.
All right, we're back.
Okay, welcome back.
Yeah,
I was just wanting to finish my line of thought that
Yeah, go ahead.
I've even had a kid who was dyslexic who loved reading.
Yeah, like it's strange that
He just needed a bit of extra time to get used to.
The letters.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, that I think that this has to do with the fact that schools in a lot of places are not conveying a love for reading and learning. And it boils down to the fact that at this point, now I have a very negative opinion of the education system. I was always told,
rightfully so, though.
Yeah. I think the purpose of the education system is to beat you down and keep you from reading and learning. And if they can prevent you from ever wanting to read, then they consider mission accomplished. So I don't have a very positive opinion of the school system.
I think someone said, and I kind of took this to heart when somebody said it. The way school was set up in the early 19th century was basically to prepare you for factory work or working in laborious situations. So you didn't necessarily need all the higher graces, which is reading or math and things like that, because that was for upper class people. They had tutors for that. So there's kind of that mentality that it perseveres even today, where okay, you're only going to be doing these types of jobs anyway, so it doesn't matter if you have a full grasp on these things that are probably beneficial for you learning to be a better person or to better yourself. So we're just going to stick you with this base model stuff. I've noticed that in a lot of I guess in kind of the public schools area or whatever. There's certain areas, especially here in America where I live, there's certain areas that are a little bit more, I would say, affluent, that tend to push a lot more out of the kids. There's a lot of elevated learning facilities here that kind of help with that. So I've seen that stuff. So there is a counterbalance there, but it's not a greater counterbalance to the.
Well, what's interesting is the 19th century, though, people were reading more.
Yeah, they were well read.
Yeah, and you look at the grammar school education of, say, 1908 of England and the grammar schools of France, they had a beautiful, I've seen a bit of the education system because there's a book on Google Books I really want to buy, where it has the entire education system just in one volume or something, and it looks great. And the reason I want that is so that one day I want to educate my kids with that, because I think that there's some great ideas there.
Yeah.
And when you consider that, for example, Tolkien was taught with that kind of thing. And this education system was really good with the grammar schools. But then we got to a point today where education is just, this is in my opinion, glorified daycare that you dump your kids because you don't want to deal with them.
Yeah,
You
kind
don't want to raise
of.
your kids.
It's kind of like I don't know if homogenize is the proper word for it, but it's kind of like basically condensed down to something that's more factory based.
Yeah.
It's like just like constructing hamburgers and pushing them out the door.
Now, that said, Howard was someone who he did not, his school education he found dull and he didn't like. But then he ended up going off to, now he did learn quite a bit still, though, it has to be said, under, I believe, anthropology when he studied that. And then he ended up going off to read himself. And he found that, to quote Goodwill Hunting, why go for the $10,000 education when you could just get it for $1.50 in late charges at the local library? And Howard ended up educating himself so well that he bragged about being an autodidact, that is to say, a self-taught man educationally. And Howard was so cultivated. He was quoting and reading books that even back then they thought, you read that? And yeah. And with this movie, just to get back on the movie, the thing is, this movie is something that what's interesting is it, as we commented earlier, young boys do watch it, do love it, and it's usually passed down by the fathers.
Yes.
I've noticed. Like, it seems to be a father-son thing, and that I find very, very fascinating. And the thing about these, about this sort of tradition is that I think it is important. And this film is all about, to an extent, the father and the son. Like, what I mean is, you've got Conan's dad who's wanting to convey and pass down so much in so much tradition and custom and tradition. And like, you have the mother, the father, and Conan who are all engaging in forging the sword together. And the sword comes out. Valyria gives so much to Conan. And so, you've got a certain amount of the father and the mother who play a role in the film. Valyria plays a large role. And so I think this is why people love it so much. There's the father in there. That's such an important character. But on the other hand, as far as cinematic best friends, Subutai is one of the best out there because he just keeps giving to Conan. Like, he's like, if Conan will not cry, I will cry.
Yeah, I love that scene too, because I was like, oh, that's real friendship. That's actually like how a friend would react. Yeah. I find it interesting too, because it reminds me of it's the path of manhood. Like the whole entire movie, like Conan's start to finish, is the rite of passage.
Yeah,
like as a man, he grows and he becomes something more than what he starts out as, and like he does this due to his family, due to his responsibilities, due to his friends, due to his lover. Like, these are all things that help him grow and become what eventually will become King Conan.
Yeah. And that's the whole idea. All the stories of Howard have such a great set of cast and of characters that surround Conan that you could see these are the people who will shape him into the king he is meant to be. And so that, like, in Hour of the Dragon at one point, just a mere attempt to hang an old woman who cannot defend herself offends Conan and send them flying into a berserker rage, because you do not harm any old woman in his kingdom. You do not harm any man, woman, or child in his kingdom. And now in Hour of the Dragon, he's almost like a father with his men, with his people, with even his former crew members. He's not seen in years, like in, I think, like a decade or something. He's like, these were my children. You don't touch them. These were my brothers in arms. You don't touch them. And so, it's something that's a personal attack to him. And in here, like, I really hoped that they would have, like, with Conan the Destroyer, I'd hoped that they'd do more with the wizard and with Subutai, but they didn't. And I think the two were better served in this movie than the sequel.
It was one of those things where the Destroyer was kind of, let's take the same elements of the original, but let's have more of a flashier story. than it was a substantive story.
Yeah, quantity over quality.
Because the visuals of Conan the Destroyer are fantastic. I enjoy it a lot. It's just you seem like after going back to watch the Conan the Barbarian like last night as I was preparing for this, it's just there's a lot more meat to this one than it was to that one. That one's great visually. I like the characters. Grace Jones and Conan the Destroyer is probably one of my highlights. It's like grab him and take him. Like we joke about that in my friend circles. I joke about that all the time, but it's like, yeah, Conan the Barbarian was such a more, I guess, fulfilling meal.
I also think that, well, as you said, the cast played a large role. The writing played a large role. The music. But I think with Conan the Destroyer, I just found it weirdly. I really like. I don't know if you've ever seen the Kevin Sorbo '90s Cole the Conqueror movie.
I've only seen it once.
Okay, well, I really loved it. I felt that it was the most Howardian, in some ways, of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
I found that the music, they went a little more heavy metal in some ways.
That was the 90s, yeah.
But they tried to still make it feel and sound a bit like the Conan the Barbarian soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
So you still felt like it was a more ancient version, in some ways, of Conan, his world. But Conan the Destroyer, I just found that I didn't really like the movie because it felt nothing like the other one. But
I feel like with the I feel like the Conan the Barbarian kind of kicked off the whole sword and sorcery genre.
It did.
Yeah, I noticed this with horror movies too, because once Friday the 13th came out, you had a ton of imitators, and a lot of them did kind of bring interesting things to the table, like Sleepaway Camp kind of put a different spin on Friday the 13th like model. But with the imitators of sword and sorcery, I feel like the second Conan movie just kind of turned into more of the same, but with less. And maybe that's you could argue that Conan the Destroyer was a kind of like a victim of its own success of the series.
Yeah. And the same could be said for the comics at one point, because they eventually declined, apparently. And they were so successful, they beat out all the competition, then they just petered out.
Yeah.
But in recent year now, but then you got the great Dark Horse Comics run, which knocked all the competition out of the ballpark so well, only to then do the same.
Yeah.
And then you had, just in recent days, you've got a lot of sword and sorcery stuff coming out, but everybody's going, oh wow, look at the new Titan Comics Conan. There's new Conan, and it's even better than anything the competition can dole out. And it is better than everything the competition is putting out, both fantasy and sword and sorcery and otherwise. And I've read the second issue, and I got a review on my Brothers Hiborian channel, and it's like reading this story, like there's such great character moments, and it's really reminiscent of some of the moments with Valeria and Subutai, with the Pictish Brissa, I think it is. And they're establishing already a really good support character for Conan. And they have a whole zombie apocalypse, like Conan versus a zombie apocalypse. What if the zombie apocalypse struck a portion of the Hiborian world?
Interesting.
Which is a really cool idea. And the thing is, they mix it with some of the Cthulhu elements that are there in Conan.
Yeah, there's always some Lovecraftian element somewhere.
So you've got the Lovecraft, the zombie apocalypse. You have the kind of Conan the Barbarian movie, some elements. And then you have the Howard, just all mixed together. And it's really good. So nothing the competition doles out can compete with this, in my opinion. And I'm just hoping they don't become a victim of their own success. Because if this is successful, apparently they said they'll release other comics of other Howard stuff.
That is interesting, because I think a lot of modern directors or modern creators that fail in creating, or they fail in trying to bring in other demographics in order to enjoy their stuff. They always go about it the wrong way, is they try to appeal to groups that are entirely opposite of their core. And I guess in trying to appeal to other groups, they kind of ignore or abandon their core audience. But in this instance, where if you're bringing in Lovecraftian elements, you're bringing in like zombie apocalypse stuff, or you're bringing in like more of the fans of the movies, you're whilst trying to still keep the core there because everybody's here for one thing, and it's Conan. You were doing a better job of like kind of grabbing onto those additional demographics while creating a solid product in the process. And you would think more people would understand that, but here we are.
Now, if they were to make another Conan movie, I would prefer it animated because there's more you can do with animation, I find. But if they have to do it live action, I kind of want them, and they are making a live action.
I know Midnight's Edge talked about that Amazon series that they passed on.
Yeah, and now Titan. Well, what happened is Heroic Signatures and Titan Publishing, I think it is, basically fused together. They decided to basically company merger. Heroic Signatures possesses the copyrights and everything of Howard. All 800 of his 800 of his poems and 200 of his stories. And that's a lot. 200 stories, I believe. And he what they did is Titan had all the most amount of distribution rights in Europe for a lot of stuff. They're very friendly with Heroic, so they decided to basically all but company merger. And at this point, they founded Titan Comics. And apparently, from what I understand, there's plans, or at least rumors, that they're going to found Titan Studios, since Marvel founded Marvel Studios in 2008, and you're going to get Titan Studios.
Might as well.
And they would have the copyright also of these movies, I believe, like Conan the Barbarian, from what I understand, and the distribution. I think that's how it would work. Don't quote me on that. I'm not an expert.
That's good, because there's a lot of, I think in the last couple of times I tried to get access to watch the movie via streaming, there's a lot of copyright mix-up stuff that's going on with it.
Yeah, and I think if this Titan Studios thing takes off, I'm going to be honest, I'd kind of want them to found their own streaming service too, because that one, maybe one from France, would probably be the only two I'd want.
I wouldn't give Netflix or Amazon or HBO Max the opportunity to make money off of that. Like, maybe that's personal bias talking.
I would just want the Titan one because I just want to watch Conan stuff and Howard. But that said, this movie would be probably on it, but I don't know. I'm not an expert. All I know is they're apparently producing in-house their own movie, or so Midnight's Edge said. There's a rumor about that.
Andres are really on top of that.
Yeah. But yeah, the support characters in this film also make the film. We got off topic several times here in the last bit. So
fair.
Yeah, probably my fault. But that said, anything else you think we got to add?
No, as far as like the additional characters like Subutai, I like their banter together. I like the fact that he said, had we not done this or whatever, I would have wound up in the same position for something else. So it just kind of, the whole bonds of fate thing just plays into that discussion.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and like just the wizard, I love Mako as a character. I like Mako as an actor, and I love everything he does. And I wish he would have at least got another 30 years out of his life so he can make some more awesome things too.
Yeah, everybody loves Mako.
He's so good.
It's a shame he passed when he did, but that's the way of the world.
Yeah, you can't fight fate sometimes.
Nope. So without further ado, thank you, Fullscreen, for showing up.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. And next time we'll do it on your platforms and whatnot.
Yeah.
I believe people can find you on Twitch, Rumble, and where else?
Odyssey is my archives. All my archive videos are located on Odyssey. I don't necessarily post new things on there. Newer videos are on Rumble, and Twitch is my live streams.
Yeah, and you do a lot of art streams from what I've seen.
Yeah, I'm in the process of trying to make a fighting game, kind of in the vein of Darkstalkers. And I am really close to having something that are getting into the really the programming side of it, which I'm terrified of. But we'll sort it out and figure it all out as we go on.
Okay. Well, I'll try asking around to see if I have any friends who might be interested in that. I know a few programmers, but not many.
Yeah, it's been an interesting solo project so far, and a year and a half worth of art. I was looking it over with my wife because she wants me to put out an art book based off of the stuff, and then I'm like, we're getting close to about 1,500 pieces of art. So
that would actually not be such a bad idea.
Yeah, I really, that was the initial idea, is just to do the art book, but I'm like, we already are this far in. Let's see if we can make an actual product out of this.
And then publish out or self-publish or something, the art book as well.
Yeah.
Afterwards, the art of your game.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of guys do that, and I think that's a smart idea. So she's a smart gal, her.
Yeah, that's why I married her.
So, but Mark says, great stream. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And it's all your fault. I'm joking. I was trying to drag it down and you kept making it a great stream. How could you do that?
I have bad habits. I like to talk.
Oh, man. But anyways, yeah. So next time we do a Conan the Barbarian movie stream, it'll be over on your platforms and whatnot.
So we do a Destroyer next?
I had thought we might. Yeah, I think we had said we were going to get into the quotes and some of the scenes, but I think we basically did do that.
There's still plenty to talk about. There's some interesting things in that movie.
Yeah, or what we could always do is, we could do Conan the Destroyer, and either that or the Solomon Kane movie. Have you seen the 2009?
I need to watch that one. I own Conan the Destroyer. I'm surprised I didn't grab Conan the Barbarian in the deluxe pack, but
okay. Well,
I also have the Lou Ferrigno Hercules films. If you ever want to talk about those, because those are unintentionally hilarious.
Are they the ones from the 60s and whatnot?
I think it was like the early 80s. It was kind of like I think it was argued as the canon answer to the Conan films.
Oh, okay. No, I don't think I've seen those.
Oh, they're so good. It's so hilarious.
Okay, I gotta see those.
Yeah, if you get a chance.
I really like the Kevin Sorbo Hercules movies and then the Legendary Journey series.
I did love that series too.
I loved Sorbo in as Herc. He's just, I'm sorry, but that's the greatest TV series of all times, in my opinion.
He's very wholesome in that series too, and that's kind of the endearing traits of the character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yet the personality is still pretty mythologically accurate. Like Heracles has his temper, but also his generous and good side, and he is actually smart in the original stories and wise. But his stepmother's kind of after him.
Yeah, she really does make his life very difficult.
Yeah. So on that note, we'll end the stream here, and maybe we'll do next time Conan the Destroyer or something. You get to choose a topic.
We'll figure it out.
And that'll be it. So everybody go check out his stuff on the aforementioned platforms. Seriously, I've checked out his art streams on Twitch. They're fun. They're great.
I try to keep it PG as possible.
Yeah, we've tried to do that on our end. We don't always succeed, but yeah. But anyways, also don't forget to smash that like here to help the stream, and I will be reposting everything as videos, of course, and subscribe. Like seriously, we're trying to get to 100. We're almost there. Let's get up there, and yeah. At least on the Brothers Barbarian. Brothers Crin, we're long since past 100. We're at 1280. If you're watching on Brothers Crin, just smash the subscribe anyways, if you haven't already, because let's get to 1300. Anyways, take care, everyone, and hail the